when a dumb, arrogant white cop had the audacity to kick a black man right in the middle of a courtroom in front of the judge, the jury, and a room full of witnesses. He thought he was asserting dominance. What he didn't know was that just seconds later, he'd be staring into the eyes of a living nightmare, a legendary Navy SEAL, a man trained to eliminate targets in silence, without leaving a trace. And today, that man didn't need to lift a finger, he just needed to stand up. And the entire courtroom, the entire system, began to tremble. The officer thought he was putting someone in their place? No, he just kicked honor, valor, and a legacy built on blood, sweat, and sacrifice. He thought the man would fall? Wrong. That man had survived hell on earth. That kick? It was nothing more than a mosquito bouncing off reinforced steel. This wasn't just a moment of violence, this was a reckoning. A moment where America was forced to look itself in the mirror and confront the ugly truth behind its justice system. So, are you ready to witness karma hit like a freight train and silence an entire courtroom? Watch the full video and drop your thoughts, because this time, justice doesn't scream, justice just stands tall and lets the truth do the damage. The air inside the courtroom was thick, every breath a conscious decision between tension and control. Officer Harris stood rigid by the prosecutor's table, his eyes flitting between the judge and Jerome, whose presence was as vast and intimidating as the ocean he once commanded. Jerome Sinclair, with a deep-set calmness that belied the brewing storm, faced his accuser with the quiet dignity that years of hardship had chiseled into his soul. The courtroom doors clattered shut behind him, the sound signaling the commencement of what was supposed to be another routine hearing. But there was nothing routine about this moment. As the murmurs died down into a reverent silence, the fluorescent lights flickered momentarily, casting brief shadows that seemed to dance mockingly across the polished floors. Jerome's stoic figure felt like an immovable force against the tide of injustice he had faced, time and again, simply for being a black man in America. Suddenly, without prelude or warning, Officer Harris moved. It was a fleeting burst of movement, a desperate, flailing gesture meant to assert dominance, to intimidate. His boot, polished for the occasion, met Jerome's center with a force intended not just to hurt but to humiliate. A gasp rippled through the courtroom, a synchronized intake of breath from those who witnessed the unprovoked aggression unfold. Jerome staggered but did not fall. His military training kicked in, his body instinctively absorbing the impact like a ship weathering a storm. The decorated Navy SEAL stood firm, eyes closed momentarily, as pain and anger simmered beneath his controlled exterior. Memories flashed behind his eyelids, combat zones where enemies were clearly marked, a stark contrast to this domestic battleground muddled with prejudice. In that charged silence, Officer Harris sneered, arrogance bubbling to the surface, unaware that his fleeting victory would soon crumble. "Thought you'd fall easier," he muttered, his voice drowned in bravado yet hollow to those who'd seen true courage. But Jerome stood firm, his silence louder than any retort. It was the silence of a man who had stared down more formidable foes, who had learned long ago that sometimes the strongest weapon was merely to endure. The judge, his face a canvas of swift-moving emotions, rose abruptly from the bench, his gavel poised for intervention. "Order!" barked Judge Peterson, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. The echoes of the gavel's fall resonated, demanding not just silence but justice. Within the courtroom, a metamorphosis occurred. Some spectators edged forward in their seats, while Jerome's composure sparked a chain reaction among those who noticed his calm rebellion. Veterans scattered throughout the room, brothers and sisters in arms began to rise, subtlety cloaked in outrage, ready to back a kindred spirit who'd proven his mettle not through force, but through stoic resistance. "Who do you think you're dealing with, son?" An older gentleman, a fellow veteran, called from the spectator benches, his tone gruff with shared history. Recognition flickered through the assembled crowd, pupils dilating, spines straightening, as Jerome's true identity slipped through the cracks of their previous assumptions. Here stood not just a black man, but a hero hidden just beneath civilian threads, a soldier of the seas whose credentials commanded not only respect but demanded accountability. Officer Harris felt the weight of his errors settling like lead upon his soul, Unbeknownst to him, the quiet man before him was not one to be felled by an errant kick or an ill-mannered slight. Jerome glanced at Harris, his gaze carrying the full weight of unspoken challenges, recognition of his improper conduct, and the inevitable retribution that awaited. And in that silent exchange, the courtroom tilted once more, the scales of justice straining against deeply ingrained bias and unfocused fury. But then something unexpected happened. A ripple of understanding crossed the room, calming the fervor and bending it toward a collective empathy. Realization slid through each pew and crevice as gradually, reluctantly, respect supplanted ignorance. Jerome, unbroken and indomitable, turned slowly, his back straight, his chin held high as he faced the full extent of his adversity. His actions spoke volumes. This wasn't about a kick delivered by a rogue officer. It was about the dignity he mustered every day, a testament to the grit and grace needed to counter a world that frequently saw him as less. The courtroom watched, transfixed by the quiet storm in their midst, as they bore witness to the unexpected heroism, the silent resilience that refused to yield to hate or fear. Every eye in the room continued to fixate on Jerome, as if by understanding his calm, they might unravel the layers of this unexpected moment. The sharp intake of collective breath had faded into a palpably thick silence, one that pressed against the ears and crowded the senses. The courtroom held its breath, suspended in a liminal space where justice teetered between the reality of the assault and the dignified defiance of its recipient. Officer Harris, previously buoyed by his own audacious bravado, now found himself shrinking under the scrutiny of those around him. The courtroom had turned judgmental juror, and every skeptic gaze was a silent indictment. His initial affront had turned to a bitter seed of regret, cracking under the pressure of its own making. Beyond the oak tables and mahogany benches, Judge Peterson's brow furrowed, a visage of incredulity and simmering disapproval. His authority felt challenged, the decorum of his courtroom shattered by the crude act of aggression. "Officer Harris," the judge intoned, his voice steady but tremulous with the gravity of the moment. "Explain yourself." Harris's bravado faltered, giving way to a faltering attempt at justification. He began, gesturing vaguely, the confidence in his voice dissipating like smoke. He was resisting. A murmur of disbelief swept through the courtroom, officers of the law, civilians, and military men alike exchanging knowing glances. Jerome, the unbroken figure in the epicenter of this chaos, had stood resolute like a lighthouse during a storm. His unyielding presence served as a beacon of fortitude, contrasting starkly against Harris's crumbling defenses. A shuffle of footsteps punctuated the uneasy quiet, as Clara, a public defender with a reputation for sharp acumen and unbending integrity, stepped into the spotlight. She approached the bench with a purpose, eyes never leaving Harris's, her presence both a comfort and challenge to the room. "Your Honor," Clara spoke, her tone as measured as Jerome's stance had been steadfast. Mr. Sinclair was neither confrontational nor resistant. Any assertion otherwise is a distortion of the facts. Her words were a scalpel, dissecting the situation with blistering clarity. Jerome's stoicism served as her anchor, as well as Harris's undoing. The ripple effect of understanding moved like a wave among the onlookers, sweeping aside preconceived notions and biases. Harris, struggling beneath the weight of mounting condemnation, sought the right words to recall control but found none. His expression flickered between indignance and desperation, the latter winning as beads of sweat began to dot his forehead. The cold veneer was slipping, replaced by a more human apprehension of consequences that rapidly approached with unrelenting speed. "Order in the court," once again, reiterated Judge Peterson, his voice a steely command aimed to wrest control back from chaos. "I've witnessed no resistance from the defendant that warrants such actions by Officer Harris." Jerome felt the subtle shift in the public consciousness, an undercurrent of alliances being quietly but irrevocably forged. He remembered the feeling of brotherhood, of solidarity built upon the silenced acknowledgments of shared histories and tribulations faced. The room, seemingly so vast and unyielding before, now felt intimate under the weight of its collective heartbeat. A heavy sense of accountability bore down upon Officer Harris as voices from the bench of spectators and press alike bubbled into whispers of disbelief. The weight of error felt tangible, and Harris inwardly reeled from the turn of public opinion. Clara stepped back, her expression settling into one of satisfaction. She had seen the tide change, won not just by legal prowess, but by the moral high ground anchored in truth. The actions taken today were unwarranted and prejudicial, Your Honor. Such conduct should not permeate this courtroom, nor should it stand unchallenged. Jerome met Clara's gaze, gratitude boxed within the unwavering steadfastness of his demeanor. Neither word nor gesture was exchanged, yet the room felt the force of their solidarity. As the proceedings continued, Jerome's awareness of the courtroom had sharpened into a crystal understanding. He was not alone. A mosaic of allies, both visible and unseen, had converged in this unlikely temple of justice. Within the crucible of that public space, an unspoken kinship emerged, promising not just restitution but reverence for a dignity hard-earned. The courtroom once again assumed its role as an arbiter, a stage set for the unveiling truth tucked behind misperceived realities. The pathway to redemption was unfolding, not merely through scripted procedures or spoken reverence, but in the small acts of courage that now stitched together this moment of accountability. The uncertainty in the courtroom was like a living thing, breathing through the gathered whispers and murmurs. It was a chorus composed of skepticism, outrage, and, unexpectedly, a swell of resolve. Clara's unwavering stand seemed to have ignited a collective will to see justice go beyond rhetoric and into action. It was time for this case to resonate beyond the confines of the courtroom. Judge Peterson, his presence commanding, reflected for a moment before speaking. He leaned slightly forward, his gavel resting momentarily dormant but ready. Given the gravity of what we've witnessed, and let this be acknowledged as a clear breach of conduct, I call this court to enter a special session. His decree silenced the last murmurs, drawing a cautious breath from the assemblage. Clara nodded to herself, her confidence in the judge's fairness quiet but immense. Jerome glanced around the courtroom, the faces of spectators now marked by shared anticipation. He stood as a witness, yet again, to how swiftly justice could be reset in the presence of goodwill and tenacity. During the recess, the judge continued, raising an eyebrow at the furor still settling among the audience. I expect thorough investigations into the actions of Officer Harris. His actions were not merely an affront to Mr. Sinclair but to every principle we stand for. His words were measured, each chosen to strike home the importance of integrity within the realms of power and enforcement. For Jerome, however, this hearing wasn't just about personal vindication, it was about forging a broader path to accountability. As a Navy SEAL, he was trained to view his actions not merely as isolated efforts, but as part of a collective mission. This mission, this courtroom, moment felt charged with that same purpose. The energy was contagious, palpably affecting those confined within four walls, yet aware that their actions could ripple beyond these barriers. A rustling from the legal desks heralded the entrance of Detective Morrow, an internal affairs officer summoned to bring objective insights into the proceedings. Tall and methodical, Morrow was known for dissecting cases with the precision of a surgeon. His gaze swept professionally over the room, before settling on Harris with a scrutiny that promised no stone would be left unturned. Detective Morrow, you'll be conducting the primary inquiry, announced Peterson, his tone inviting no dissent. The integrity of our institution depends on your findings. Conclude what truly transpired and extract clarity from chaos. Morrow nodded curtly, understanding fully the charge he'd been given. The weight of systemic integrity now rested heavily on his shoulders, prompting a silent vow to approach the work with the diligence it demanded. Jerome watched as Morrow settled into strategic deliberation. He recognized the look of a man sifting through rubble to find a solid ground. It reminded him of the times in the field where uncovering things was akin to a sacred ducia revelation, not just of physical evidence, but of truth realized in its most unadulterated form. Beside him, Clara was already in motion, huddling briefly with her team as they prepped for the recess. The justice she sought would not unravel solely through judicial proceedings, but through the unwavering light of truth she shone on every dark corner. As the room slowly began to dissolve into comfortable discourse amidst the break, Jerome stood alone for a moment by the witness box. Veterans in attendance offered subtle nods, gestures born from a shared understanding, a reminder of the battles fought and the valor that still coursed through their veins. He felt their support seeping into his bones, renewing an indomitable spirit shaped by days and nights spent guarding freedom's door. In the whirlwind of proceedings, this was a soundless source of strength, fortified his belief in due process and fair trial, concepts he had fought for and protected. Outside the courtroom, the world waited with breathless anticipation for the results of these inquiries. News cameras were poised to capture their stories. If resolved fairly, this case could act as a blueprint for transformation within law enforcement, a rallying point for communities tired of watching their heroes maligned and forgotten. And in that hum of anticipation, Jerome felt neither bitterness nor impatience but acceptance. This was not just a battle against one officer's misguided bias, but a stand against an entire system's entrenched prejudice. The realization was humbling, grounding his resolve more firmly as he revisited the forward trajectory that lay suspended yet potent before him. His hope lay, as always, in justice served fairly, no matter how long it took for the pathways of law to converge with equitable spirit. For now, the promise of clarity restated itself, one that wove through the actions of Judge Peterson and Detective Morrow, through Clara's vigilant advocacy, and ultimately, through Jerome's unmoving faith in the mission still to complete. The recess was a breath held in time, a collective pause amidst the swelling tide of justice. As the courtroom settled into its temporary lull, the gallery emptied into the adjoining hallways, bustling with a renewed undercurrent of discussion and speculation. The bracing air outside the courthouse was soon filled with a charged atmosphere, each conversation a thread in the tapestry of a story still unfolding. Jerome found himself a subject of whispered deliberations, the focal point of a narrative that had outgrown its initial confine. His calm demeanor, though outwardly unruffled, was animated by a storm of controlled emotions. Each step he took through the halls was marked by visible support hands clasped on shoulders, nods of encouragement, gestures that stitched together the frayed edges of camaraderie among strangers united in their pursuit of justice. He found a moment's reprieve outside, beneath a blanched sky hinting at rain. It was there, in the brevity of solitude, that Jerome revisited his military pasta reservoir imbued with teachings of composure under fire and resilience in adversity. He recalled missions where courage was a currency and alliance the mode of survival. The echoes of his past bolstered his spirit for the ongoing struggle within this courtroom, a different front but a familiar fight. Nearby, Clara paused under a stone archway, reviewing notes and strategies through practiced eyes. She had seen cases turn at the crux of moments like Thesia Fulcrum, where truth swayed the balanced scales of justice. Her confidence in the system, marred yet defiant, reinforced her belief in Jerome's eventual exoneration. As the break drew to a close, the assemblage filtered back inside with renewed urgency. The tension from earlier had not dissipated but evolved, sharpening into purpose. Glances exchanged among the audience had shifted from passive observance to an engaged witness, each person a potential catalyst for change. Detective Morrow took the floor, presenting preliminary findings with the meticulous gravity the situation demanded. His presence alone was enough to reclaim the courtroom's attention, a signal of impending revelations that could sway the adjudicating balance. Initial inquiry suggests gross misconduct. Morrow began, his voice unyielding, piercing the hush with a precision crafted from years of experience, unraveling truths from chaos. Officer Harris's actions were not aligned with protocol, nor necessitated by any perceivable threat. The statement punctuated the air, heavier than any pronouncement prior. Eyes turned to Harris, whose countenance further paled, the severity of his missteps closing like iron shackles around his perception of invincibility. The verdict delivered by public opinion was resounding, carrying with it the creeping tide of accountability. Clara leaned in, her expression as steely as her resolve to ensure the process moved forward with integrity and tact. This was the juncture where diligence and conscience would sway the pendulum towards justice, not only for Jerome, but for the wider community far beyond the courtroom's structural limits. Jerome felt the collective exhale as a silent unison of hope that systemic prejudice, generator of countless past injustices, could be dismantled by the unified will for reformation. He appreciated the moment, marking it as a pivotal twist in an enduring journey towards equality. The message was clear, reverberating through every gavel's strike. Prejudice, unquestioned and internalized, was now subject to systemic scrutiny. As Harris's posture slumped under the prosecutorial lens now focusing on his actions, Clara stepped forward once more. Her timing was surgical, meshing advocacy with the hard facts Morrow presented. "It's crucial to understand the broader implications, Your Honor," she asserted, her words crafting bridges between legalist jargon and societal change. The courtroom absorbed her plea, an audience intertwined in the narrative of one man but echoing with the stories of many others. For Jerome, this public dissection was overdue rectification. It wasn't purely exoneration he sought, but the seeding of reform throughout a flawed judicial landscape. It was an opportunity to shift tides, altering currents that threatened to drown those marginalized by bias and disregard. As the courtroom readjusted to the flux and flow of renewed proceedings, Jerome felt grounded not simply by anticipation but by resolve reinforced through kinship. The course was set, charting through complex legalities towards clearer skies of fairness. Outside, raindrops finally began to fall, gentle yet persistent. They tapped against windows, infusing the room with a rhythmic cadence that paralleled the steady hammering of justice, an elemental reminder of change both literal and metaphorical. And so, Jerome stood resiliently, embracing the rain as part of a cleansing process, an ode to clarity emerging from tumult, as each droplet outside resonated with an acknowledgement of the broader narrative unfolding. This was the moment, not only for personal victory but for a wider rebirth of principles dedicated to integrity amidst trials yet faced. The onlookers, like Jerome, saw promise reflected in the storm, a shared understanding that when truth emerges from silence, neither malice nor ignorance could ever shelter long beneath its expansive shadow. The thunderous resonance of revelation cloaked the courtroom, a wave of realization that washed over every face as Detective Morrow's findings sank in. In this room, truth took its first steps on a path unworn by false assumptions, breaking from prescribed bias that too often skewed justice. Jerome, standing steadfast amidst this unfurling drama, was not merely a participant, but a herald pushing against the boundaries that had long contained him. The judge's bench seemed a fortress of solemnity, Judge Peterson now a custodian of justice as his gaze swept the room, demanding both respect and order. He was a man tempered by years within these walls, yet even he felt the critical significance of what transpired here today, a push against the inertia of ingrained prejudices. "Officer Harris will be placed under official investigation," intoned the judge, his voice a bell of accountability ringing across the assembled. With those words, a subtle shift rumbled through the room. Justice was stepping forth against the inertia of old wrongs, seeking fresh pathways through fields of reason. Each syllable from Judge Peterson's mouth punctuated the air, a lexicon of resolve that left no room for ambivalence. Harris, now bereft of his earlier bravado, sat subdued and fixed in place by the invisible weight of a system he had so carelessly disregarded. The self-assured sneer that marked his features had softened to confusion and loss, a far cry from the image of authority he had wielded like a club. Clara stood next to Jerome, her presence an anchor in the churning sea of revelations. Her steady presence was a contrast to the erupting energies in the courtroom, a beacon much like Jerome himself. Together, they embodied the silent understanding that battles like this were waged not just in the field but in every institution where bias could birth injustice. "Your Honor, we will be filing for a formal reprimand and entitlement to damages," Clara announced, her steady voice a counterpoint to the emotional charges that ran rampant. Her eyes glanced momentarily towards Jeremiah, reassuring nod exchanged between kindred spirits. The air seemed to still, the gravity of her statement settling heavily into the fibers of those present. There was an inherent promise in her words and assurance that what happened today would spill beyond the courthouse walls, a ripple extending through the wider sea of public consciousness, fueled by collective accountability. For Jerome, the gravity of what this meant was not lost. Before him was not merely a personal vindication but a possibility for catalyzing broader transformations. He felt a quiet anticipation among the spectators, an unspoken understanding that this was a precedent-defining moment which carried the promise to reshape, reform, and renew faith in a system often rendered impotent by its own neglect of humanity. Harris's pallor now mirrored his diminishing prominence, his authority shrinking with every reaffirmation of his culpability. He was no longer the imposing figure casting shadows, but a mere player in a larger unfolding drama narrative that no longer revolved around his authority but Jerome's emergent truth. The courtroom began to buzz once more, not with dissent but with the energy of possibility. a collective eagerness to witness the unfolding of justice. A deeper tide of change was set in motion, one where individuals like Jerome were not footnotes but central figures, their stories reshaping dialogues and dismantling narratives unfairly crafted by history's failing hands. The storm outside mirrored the sea change within, rain cascading against windows with a rhythm that complemented history's unfolding. It was a cleansing deluge, aligning with Jerome's silent Wisheza manifest precipitation of clarity cascading upon a world newly aware. As Jerome absorbed the room's shifting dynamics, he felt again the invisible presence of support, of alliances forged in unspoken vows to change. He understood deeply the burdens of a life defending freedom, where each battle won could eventually tear down unyielding edifices of prejudice. In this charged atmosphere, Jerome not only saw the inevitability of personal justice but glimpsed the broader horizon. This wasn't merely about reclaiming integrity snatched by the presumptions of others. This was about laying the groundwork for lasting reform-own courtroom, one story and one undeniable truth at a time. With the session's proceedings drawing to a close, a hushed anticipation filled the room. An understanding permeated that this day was a microcosm of a larger struggling battle for not just one man's dignity, but the potential reclamation of justice for countless others who, like Jerome, carried the scars of a societal struggle woven into the fabric of their lives. In those final moments within the courtroom, Jerome allowed himself a rare smile, a testament to his belief in the triumph of courage over fear, of persistence over reluctance. It was an outward manifestation of a veteran's legacy, undaunted, unbroken, and unyielding in pursuit of a future transformed by dreams realized in action. The gavel's echo slowly faded, yet the gravity of Judge Peterson's decree continued to hang in the air, a potent reminder of the shift underway. Jerome stood tall, his very presence a silent testament to resilience and the fight for rightful justice. The room's charged silence transitioned into the steady shuffle of feet and the hush of whispers, a cacophony of collective resolve to hold power accountable. As the courtroom emptied, Judge Peterson, his expression a mosaic of sternness and contemplation, signaled to the bailiff, "Officer Harris," he commanded, his tone neither cruel nor lenient, but infused with the weight of judicial duty. "You will remain under custody until the inquiry is complete. Know this, your badge bears authority, but it does not confer indisputable immunity." Harris's face twisted in disbelief, the last remnants of defiance evaporating under the harsh glare of accountability. It was the closest semblance of justice he would face today, a confrontation not just with legal ramifications, but with the stark revelation of his own internal failings. Unnoticed by most, at the back of the courtroom, a low murmur rose. It was the subdued rumble of Unity civilians, veterans, and observers, aligned in shared indignation, their eyes refocusing collective anger into something more profound, a drive for systemic change. Jerome watched, his steady gaze touching briefly upon the faces of those gathered. To him, they were reminders of the larger narrative, the unheralded voices, the unyielding spirits echoing through the vaulted ceilings, insisting that change be not just occasional but perpetual. Clara joined him at the doors, her demeanor fortitude personified, encouraging without overwhelming. "Today was a good day," she said, her voice resonant with relief and purpose. "But this isn't the end. There's more work ahead, Jerome." He nodded, acknowledging the road still long and winding. "I know," he replied, his voice betraying a weariness tempered by hope. "But it's a start. Maybe today we set the wheels in motion for something bigger." Their conversation was interrupted by the soft push of the main doors, opening onto a world eager to hear of their triumph. The media, galvanized by spectacle but constrained by accountability, awaited them reminiscent of vultures, yet serving a necessary role in amplifying the wins for justice after years of silence. As they stepped into the melee, cameras flashed, capturing the moment for history. Reporters clamored, questions cascading over one another, each hoping for a soundbite, a narrative thread to pull into the broader tapestry of societal progress. "Mr. Sinclair," shouted one, thrusting a microphone between journalists, "what's your next move? Do you foresee this case impacting the wider legal system?" His brow furrowed for a moment, searching for words that might carry the weight and tenderness needed for such an answer. "I hope it does," Jerome replied, steady. "This is about more than what happened here today. It's about ensuring no one else has to face the same." and yes, I believe the system can change." His response was met with a chorus of acceptance, a symphony of pens scratching and shutters clicking to immortalize the sentiment. In this moment, Jerome became not just a man fighting his battle, but a catalyst for those yet untold. Back inside the now vacant courtroom, Judge Peterson remained, reflecting in the solitude. Alone, he considered the trials not just of today, but the numerous paths coming ahead. He knew each case brought the possibility of precedent, each decision a ripple upon the vast sea of justice in need of reclamation. The weight of his robe seemed heavier today, but it bore within it hope cultivated in silence. He allowed himself a rare, private smile, acknowledging the tiny victories within this colossus of struggle. The path of reform was relentless, yet today, progress had taken one significant stride forward. As Jerome and Clara continued through the horde gathered outside, each step seemed lighter, not merely an act of personal vindication but of widening avenues for many, guarded by their shared truths and undeniable courage. The evening settled in, weaving golden threads of sunset through the courthouse pillars. Its warmth spoke of renewal, with echoes of enduring struggles and tomorrow's hopes, holding the promise of a horizon that beckoned, refreshed, and patient. Within this moment of profound transition, Jerome and Clara walked shoulder to shoulder, allies in arms against prejudice. They stepped toward a future recalibrated by the events of today, confident in the legacy, firm in its strides towards an equitable awakening. As the last vestiges of daylight faded, painting the courthouse in twilight's hushed tones, the weight of the day's proceedings hung ambivalent yet rife with possibility. Inside the cavernous courtroom, now void of attendees, echoes of the confrontation lingered like imprints, reminders of the challenges dismantled and bridges yet to be built. Outside, the air was alive with a vibrancy born from renewed hope. Jerome and Clara stood slightly apart from the press swarm, taking a moment's respite. Around them, the night seemed eager to wrap its curtain around this pivotal day, a cautious embrace covering new beginnings. Veterans attending as spectators lingered in small clusters, exchanging words of camaraderie, discussions woven with threads of past service and present civil obligation. Their part in today's events was clear: a congregation of individuals gathered not just to witness, but to encourage the birth of a more just world. They knew intimately the cost of freedom and carried its weight into every aspect of their civilian lives. Among them was William, a fellow veteran whose own battles, both seen and hidden, were told through the hard lines of a face acquainted with sacrifice. He approached Jerome with the easy familiarity of shared history, their pasts converging long before today's confluence. Despite time's passage, their connection was immediate and grounded. "Hell of a day, Jerome," William began, his gravelly voice tempered by experience. "But you stood your ground like I knew you would." Jerome offered a tight nod, a smile tugging at his lips. "Couldn't have done it without knowing you guys were there. Means the world." Their exchange needed no further words. It was understood that this battle, though personal, spoke to every soul who walked beside them in uniform, a testament that valor knew no color, only character. As they parted, Clara stepped forward, her eyes filled with plans and tomorrow's endless lists. "William's right, you know," she commented, her tone conspiratorial yet warming. "Today was only possible because of people willing to push back. People like you," Jerome interjected, his gratitude earnest. "You fought tooth and nail in there, and we got them to hear us. That's half the battle." Clara shook her head slightly, humility and determination dancing in her expression. "And you stood for something. You showed them what resilience looks like, Jerome. That's not something taught, that's lived, and lived well." The bond between them had transitioned from a shared legal undertaking to something deeper, an alliance rooted in mutual respect and an unyielding quest for justice. Together, they stood embodying the ethos of change, believing in victory that transcended the immediate to touch broader horizons. Nearby, a young reporter, observing their interaction with keen interest, approached with hesitance, but determination gleamed in her eyes. "Excuse me," she ventured, introducing herself as Tasha. "I'm covering part of today's proceedings for our publication. Would you mind sharing what you hope the outcome of all this will be?" Jerome paused, contemplating the scope of her question. His mind raced along the spectrum of hopes both said and left unsaid that this day had unlocked. "I hope," he began thoughtfully, that today's events inspire more than just headlines, that they inspire change, prompt introspection, and drive reform. Clara chimed in, reinforcing his statement with precision honed from courtroom battles. We aim to be more than a single story. We aim for systemic fairness and accountability, ensuring that dignity isn't something fought for but expected. Tasha nodded, scribbling fervently, capturing their vision with the hopeful urgency of someone newly introduced to the potency of transformative narratives. Her presence exemplified a younger generation poised to carry these stories forward, an echo of the justice Jerome sought. And as conversations continued, a quiet understanding blossomed within the gathering throng. A mix of solemn resolve and burgeoning optimism effervesced, turning into a palpable collective energy that would follow them beyond today. The crowd, emboldened by the day's defiance against systemic failings, gradually dispersed with lessons in hand, stories to tell, and change to demand. Each person departed under the widening night sky, with steps lightened by the strides taken toward a fairer world. As the courthouse steps cleared and quiet settled in once more, Jerome silently reflected on the journey thus far. His silhouette against the backdrop of history in motion was a figure of equilibrium, balanced between the weight of what had come before and the potential of what was yet to come. The night breathed a promise back to him that the fight for equity was not static but dynamic, ever unfolding with the dawn of each new day. And with Clara by his side, Jerome resolved to continue wielding his story like a beacon through darkness and light, until justice became the expected inheritance of all. As they turned to leave, Jerome felt the cool whisper of the night breeze carry forward his silent vow of commitment to justice and a tribute to every voice risen to change an imperfect world. The courtroom's residual echoes faded into the background as Jerome and Clara left the building, stepping into the crisp night air. The city hummed around them, a tapestry of distant conversations and the mechanical drone of late-night traffic threading through the urban expanse. Darkness cloaked the world in a comforting embrace, nurturing the promise of renewal that lay dormant beneath the surface of every whispered breeze. They walked together across the courthouse steps, their footsteps a rhythmic cadence to the evening's quietude. Jerome felt the weight of the day's events begin to settle in his bones, a mixture of triumph and latent exhaustion tugging at his consciousness. Yet beneath it all, pulse of determination refused to ebb, a testament to the resilience that had always defined him. Clara, ever attuned to the gravity of moments both grand and minute, broke the silence first. "You know, today wasn't just about what happened in there," she said, gesturing back toward the courthouse. Her voice was soft yet firm, a bridge built from solidarity. "It was about every single person who stands with us and what we represent. It reminds me of why we keep fighting." He nodded, understanding the assertion beyond mere words. The fight was never solitary. It was woven into the collective fabric of shared experience, a testament to those who walked the path beside him and those who would follow. As they made their way toward the scattered street lamps casting pools of golden light onto the sidewalk, Jerome's mind drifted back to the unyielding support he had felt from his fellow veterans during the day. Their silent camaraderie had been a balm to his spirit, reinforcing the knowledge that the quest for justice was a cause noble and unforgettable. He thought of William and the countless others whose stories converged in this testament against injustice. Each had been a warrior in their own right, staunch defenders of truth, wrapped in the colors of a freedom not yet fully realized. Turning a corner, they passed a small park, its benches lined by moon-dappled leaves gently rustling in the breeze. A few people lingered under its sheltering trees, their muted conversations mingling with nature's nocturnal whispers. It was a peaceful tableau, an ode to the everyday lives Jerome sought to protect through his stand. "Everything comes full circle, doesn't it?" Jerome mused aloud, his gaze fixed on the twinkling skyline, its lights a testament to human endurance. Clara smiled, a knowing glint in her eyes. "It always does. And that's the beauty of it, isn't it? What we set in motion doesn't just end with us. It travels, finds its way into places we can't even imagine, affecting change in ways we'll never fully see." He appreciated her optimism, her ability to see beyond the struggle. It was an attribute that complemented his own brand of steady resilienceers, an optimism, bright and fierce, his, a calm, rooted strength. As they approached a subway entrance, their paths diverging at least for the day, Clara paused, her hand resting lightly on Jerome's arm. "I'll see you tomorrow," "There's more to do," she said, borrowing from the quiet promise that evenings like this invariably inspired. Jerome nodded, his conviction rekindled against the night's modest chill. "Definitely," he agreed, the affirmation a bridge stretching into tomorrow's horizon. "We've got a lot of ground to cover." They shared a moment of understanding, sealed by the rich silence surrounding a tapestry of potential, the night's dark fabric stitched with silver threads of hope. Once alone, Jerome stood momentarily at the cusp of the subway entrance, his reflection briefly caught in the train's glass doors that rushed open. As he descended below ground, the world above seemed to hold its breath in anticipation of the new dawn. The steady rumble of the train vibrated through his feet, blending with the rhythmic clatter of its journey. He fell into a familiar reverie, considering his place in this expansive narrative. Each triumph sowed the seeds for the next challenge, yet his heart was buoyed by courage and kinship that would forever fuel the journey forward. In the intimate isolation of the crowd, Jerome's thoughts drifted toward the future, filled with the anticipation of achieving justice not just theoretically within the cold language of law, but practically in every life altered for the better. As the world rolled by beyond the fluorescent-lit carriage, Jerome allowed himself the indulgence of envisioning that changed future. It was not perfection he sought, but the steady chisel of change carving pathways for justice, each carved by hand, one story, one step at a time. With every mile conquered, the path was one step closer to justice, one heartbeat nearer to a world reshaped by the courage of those refusing to be simply silent. Jerome Sinclair, soldier, advocate, and torchbearer, pressed onward, journey charted not in desperation and defense, but in determination and equitable resolve. Subterranean tunnels gave way to the familiar din of city sounds as Jerome exited the subway station. The night had deepened, shrouding the streets in a quiet calm punctuated only by the distant hum of cars and the echoing rhythms of late-night footfalls. His mind, however, was anything but settled on orbit of thoughts, looped around the day's profound moments, each a gravitational force binding him to his purpose. As Jerome navigated the urban sprawl, his senses remained acutely attuned to the world around him, honed through years of military service. His feet carried him instinctively toward home, but his mind repelled against inertia, rerouted instead by the magnetic pull of memories waiting to be reconciled. Nearing a small, unassuming storefront, Jerome paused, the motion thoughtful. It was the kind of place easily bypassed by the unseeing eye of Veterans Support Center, windows losing their battle against neglect and time, but inside, a sanctuary carved from camaraderie and shared stories. It was here, amid worn chairs and the scent of stale coffee, that many like Jerome found a modicum of solace, peers driven by communal history to gather. Tonight, the center lay quiet, but for Jerome, it resonated with lively ghost echoes of past voices, discussions vibrant and raw, laughter hard, earned, and silences heavy with untold truths. He lingered there, the bricks of the building cool beneath his fingertips, and in the clarity of the moment, he recalled the strength drawn from those familiar bonds. The night seemed to gather around him, listening as Jerome's mind traversed earlier years, reflecting on missions etched with vivid clarity. In those canvases of memory, the camaraderie never waned, despite the gulf of civilian life that history often cleaved between veterans like himself. Jerome knew that here, the stories weren't trapped on paper, they breathed through the recounting of shared histories, finding life in every retelling. A distant cough brought him back to the present, the noise a reminder of his intent to return home. Yet before he could begin his walk again, a familiar voice interrupted the melancholic quiet, a low, resonant drawl laced with years of friendship. "You never really leave it all behind, do you, Sinclair?" Turning, Jerome found himself face to face with Captain Roy Bennett, an old comrade whose presence was as comforting as it was grounding. The captain stood slightly bent with the passage of time, a roadmap of experience etched into the lines of his face. There was weariness in his stance, but also something untarnished on inherent tenacity and indelible loyalty. "No, Captain," Jerome replied warmly, extending a hand that was immediately taken into a firm clasp, a bond reaffirmed through skin and bone. "I guess some parts of us never really lay down arms." Roy chuckled softly, a sound woven from shared exploits and battles conquered side by side. "I heard about today's events," he said, his voice now tinged with a serious edge. "Word spreads fast when you're stirring the pot quite like you did." Jerome's lips quirked into a small smile, amused by the understatement. "Just trying to ensure the future's a little brighter than today," he said simply, his ambition laid bare in the humble admission. The captain nodded, the mirth dissipating as he regarded Jerome with the keen eyes of command. "You know, it's people like you who remind the rest of us why we keep pushing. The peace might be harder to win than the fight itself, but it's a worthy battle." Underneath the blanket of night, they stood in quiet companionship, bearing witness to the roles they continued to play, even off the battlefield. Jerome felt renewed by the conversazione, silent chain forged anew from history, binding past efforts to present aspirations. "I have to keep pushing, Captain," Jerome murmured, the words an echo of commitment. "Not just for us, but for those who'll follow. Our fight isn't done, and we owe them that much." The captain's pause was measured, his agreement implicit. "At ease, soldier," he said finally, a command gentle yet resonant, with deep camaraderie. "We'll stand the ground with you, for as long as it's needed." They exchanged a final handshake, the action not merely a farewell but a pact renewed. As Jerome turned away, the captain lingered, his form a sentinel under the scattering stars, a guardian reminder of kinship transcending time and trials. Resuming his journey, Jerome carried the conviction of shared purpose back into the city's embrace, his path illuminated by both streetlights and the steadfast knowledge of good company. Each step forward threaded another stitch in the fabric of change, adding layers to the narrative defining their collective grit. The night greeted Jerome with a whispering chorus, his heart buoyed by the promise of continued fight, knowing that with every effort and every alliance, justice took another step toward unfurling its wings into the long-waiting dawn. The hum of the city began to fade as Jerome neared the modest brownstone he called home. The building stood stalwart amidst the changing tides of the neighborhood, its brick facade a testament to resilience not unlike Jerome's own. Here was his sanctuary, a place where the weight of battles both won and ongoing could temporarily slip from his shoulders. Inside, the familiar creak of the door greeted him, the comforting sound resonating through the front hall. Jerome's senses, honed by years of attentive duty, welcomed the nuances of home life, the soft ticking of the clock, the faint aroma of pine from the wooden floors, and the soothing quiet that only a sanctuary could offer. Dropping his keys into the small bowl by the door, Jerome paused to gather his thoughts, letting the day's events settle naturally within him. The home was a quiet refuge, a far cry from the charged atmosphere of the courtroom and the frenzied media storm that lay in his wake. He moved to the living room, settling into an armchair that had long since taken the shape of his frame. This was more than just furniture, it was a pillar of his sanctuary, as steadfast as the man seated there. The room was a blend of the old and new, fragments of his past stealing glances from the walls alongside glimpses of hope for the future. His eyes landed on a particular photograph perched on the mantel, an image captured long ago during a mission in a place far removed from everyday life. In it, a younger Jerome stood with his SEAL team, camaraderie etched into their sun-worn faces, each man marked by the trials they had shared and survived. The nostalgia the photograph evoked was tinged with fondness and an understanding of time's passage. These men had been his brothers, their collective strength forming an impregnable shield, and though life's river had carried them to disparate lands, that bond had become a map for resilience, guiding him through recent trials. Jerome's gaze drifted to a small shadow box beside the photograph, containing medals he seldom spoke of. These accolades, while cherished, were symbols of past battles more than present endeavors. Today's fight was cut from the same cloth, quilted into a new narrative on where valor extended beyond physical skirmishes into enduring societal battles. The soft chime of his phone interrupted the quiet, an unexpected intrusion into his reverie. He glanced at the screen, his sister's name lighting it up. Her timing was impeccably intuited. "Hey, Jay," her familiar voice flooded the room as he answered, immediate warmth transcending the digital line. "I saw the news. Mom couldn't stop talking about it during dinner." He smiled at that, picturing their mother's spirited proclamation of her son's stand. "I'm guessing she had a few choice words about it," he replied, amusement teasing the edges of his voice. "Oh, absolutely," his sister laughed, a sound like wind through chimes. "She's so proud of you, and frankly, we all are. It's about time they start seeing the man we've always known." Jerome listened, her words wrapping around him, each syllable a token of support. "It means a lot, you know. Today was tough, but necessary. I just kept thinking of everyone who stands behind me. You all give me strength." There was a pause, heavy with unsaid emotions and the comforting affluence of familial bonds. "We're with you, always have been," she said, the declaration resonating through him. "And I'm not just saying that because it's what you need to hear." They spoke a while longer, weaving threads between past actions and future aspirations with gentle laughter and shared dreams. The conversation was a lifeline through life's stormy seas, tethering him to the grounding force of family, a constant star guiding him homeward. As the call concluded, Jerome was left with a renewed sense of purpose, the embers of determination stoked and ready for the tasks ahead. The day's events, woven with lessons and victories, had become the latest chapter in his unfolding mission, now framing future efforts through clearer lenses. The night crept closer to midnight as Jerome prepared for rest, the fatigue in his muscles a testament to the day's rigors and triumphs. Yet, as he lay beneath the quiet refuge of starlit ceilings, dreams gave birth to new realities, shaping paths paved by perseverance and painted by justice. In the deep hush of his sanctuary, Jerome knew that tomorrow would inevitably come with fresh hurdles and untold potential. Yet fortified by courage and kinship, he welcomed the dawn's break, a herald for new beginnings and the continuation of a journey empowered by shared humanity. Here in his modest home, beneath the steadfast gaze of old photographs, Jerome Sinclair found peace, a momentary balm in an unyielding fight, whispering a promise as old as time itself. Justice, though delayed, was ever on the horizon, waiting for those with the strength to seize it. The new day unfolded with the quiet strength of a whispered promise. Outside, the city was already bustling, struggling to catch up with the unyielding passage of time. Morning light filtered through the blinds in Jerome's room, casting striped shadows across the floor, a silent signal that another battle awaited. Jerome rose with the discipline of a soldier, every movement purposeful despite the heaviness that lingered from the previous day's toil. He greeted the morning as he always did, with a resolve that never fully dissipates, the echoes of past commitment shadowing him like a trusted ally. Today was a continuation, a step forward on the path his actions had forged. The mirror reflected the image of a man molded by history, skin sun-kissed and lined with wisdom imparted through trials. Jerome, a man of few illusions and resolute determination, saw in his own eyes the same fire that had long propelled him through arenas both known and undiscovered. After a quick breakfast that was more functional than leisurely, Jerome prepared to face the world once more. His uniform today was less about fabric and fit, more about composure and the inner armor of unwavering integrity. He left the apartment, locking the comforting silence behind, and entered the world beyond of swirling energies, where today's mission would play out. Clara awaited him at the designated spot near the courthouse, her stance embodying readiness and professional rigor. The morning's chill lingered like an afterthought, its presence neither welcome nor discouraging as they convened. "Morning," she greeted, adjusting the strap of her briefcase that hung heavy with the promises of justice and reform. "You ready for another round, Jerome?" "More than ready," he replied, his smile a preview of the confidence anchoring him. In Clara, he saw a reflection of his own commitment, a shared understanding forged in the crucible of advocacy and resistance. They walked side by side, another day carved into the path of contention and cause. Today was continuation and escalation, the stakes high, but so were the rewards, a tapestry mended not just for him, but those who'd lend their stories to the ever-expanding narrative of justice. The courthouse loomed ahead, neither ominous nor inviting, just a house of impartiality cloaked by human endeavor. Its halls were alive with activity, corridors flowing with individuals whose day, like Jerome's, involved shifting the heavy pendulum of legal machinery. Inside, the air lacked the turbulent charge of the previous day, replaced by a vigilant calmness. Today was about laying foundations, ensuring that what had been set in motion transcended beyond temporary shifts into lasting reformation. The room filled with lawyers, activists, and supporters who had followed Jerome's journey from its roots, nurturing the community of allies forming the bulwark behind his efforts. Together they were a coalition of conscientious momentum, individuals transcending the trappings of spectatorship to become active agents of change. Clara took charge, like an orchestra conductor commanding attention and directing focus on the movements yet to come. Her skillful delineation of facts weave of their past victories, and the untangling of systemic flaw set the stage for continued advocacy. Jerome listened, the comfort of familiar rhetoric buoying his spirit. Each word, measured and deliberate, was a step further along the new path they had chiseled out of the rocky landscape of bias and oversight. Despite the courtroom's orderly calm, Jerome's attention flickered to the array of faces around him. He observed the quiet resolve of allies and skeptics alike, their stories bound invisibly to his own. The young reporter Tasha caught his eye, the reflection of conviction burning brightly in her gaze, readying to turn narrative into action with every click of the laptop. The session commenced, each participant taking their respective roles to propel today's segment of this ongoing odyssey. The air hummed with subtext and determined urgency, an understanding that today's efforts were not isolated, but a hinge upon which doors of equity could swing wide open. Through the morning's proceedings, Jerome found himself mindful of the rhythmic cadence of testimony. Every legal argument progressed with purposeful strides, intertwining their collective stories into an unbreakable braid of shared determination. The day was long, the witness of systematic examination, a necessary step in the quest for remedy. Jerome shifted occasionally in his seat, each repositioning a reminder of how far they had traveled this path, and how necessary these efforts were in etching justice into the bedrock of institutional integrity. And as the afternoon light lengthened into the shadows cast by high windows, Jerome realized that amidst today's ongoing momentum, the promise of tomorrow, the endless endeavor for fairness and forthrightness, remained ever present. The truth was a constant mantra, whispered through the sieve of history, echoed in the actions of advocates like Clariever, pursuing the echoes of justice, proliferating into the multitude of future stories waiting to be told. As the session concluded for the day, each participant rose, buoyed not by the finality of resolutions, but by the understanding of continuous struggle. Outside, the early evening awaited, another sun set over the horizon, as the courthouse emptied into the realm of possibilities postponed, but never lost. In the glowing aftermath, Jerome and Clara lingered briefly in the shadowy courtyard, sharing a moment born from camaraderie, the enduring treasure chest of shared journey and mutual endeavor. Today, like yesterday, would build bridges to tomorrow, where justice's long arc, guided by steady hands and unbeaten spirits, bent firmly toward rectitude and reconciliation, a truth as certain as the night following day. As evening descended once more, weaving its gentle tapestry of twilight over the courthouse, the atmosphere shifted from the rigid formality of daytime pursuits to a more introspective, reflective calm. Jerome and Clara stepped out into the quiet embrace of dusk, the courthouse looming behind them like a sentinel, keeping vigil over their ongoing quest for justice. The day had been demanding, requiring a precise dance of legal acumen and personal fortitude. Each story presented in the courtroom became a key piece of a larger puzzle, slowly revealing a picture framed by shared resilience and the unyielding search for truth. The fact-finding had been meticulous, but it was an essential part of weaving the narrative of systemic injustice they aimed to unravel. Outside, the world seemed to pause, holding its breath, as if waiting for the next chapter to unfold. The air was crisp, each breath drawn grounding them in the moment, yet promising the potential of new beginnings. The quiet murmur of streets around them, cars passing in fluid motion, reminded them of the life continuing beyond these walls, a life they were striving to improve through their collective actions. Clara, ever astute, broke the meditative silence that had cocooned them as they walked. Today was intense, but necessary, she acknowledged, her voice carrying the reflection of worn exhaustion and the spark of renewed vigor. She pulled her coat closer, warding off the encroaching cold, a silent testament to her ever-present determination. Jerome nodded, understanding her sentiment deeply. "We covered a lot of ground," he agreed. "Every step matters. It's a marathon, not a sprint. That's what keeps it sustainable." The metaphor resonated, reminding them both of their enduring commitment not just to the individual victory but to the broader war against systematized inequity. They were runners on a formidable track, pushing pace not solely for personal glory but for the handoff to the next line of advocates. Their walk veered toward a small cafe nestled on the corner, an oasis known for its welcoming warmth and the intoxicating aroma of freshly brewed coffee. It had become a haunt of sorts for Jeremy, a place to reflect, recharge, and find brief solace from the rigors of the fight. Inside, the ambiance was cozy, conversations cloaked in comfort, offering a refuge from the world outside. Jerome and Clara settled into a table by the window, each with a steaming mug in hand, allowing themselves a moment of reprieve amidst the velvety hum of life around them. The cafe offered an unvoiced understanding, a sacred space providing temporary escape. Jerome sipped thoughtfully, flavors mingling with his thoughts, adding subtle texture to the musings of the day's events. The glow of soft lighting mimicked the steady pulse of resolve that neither he nor Clara would ever surrender. "I keep thinking about how our actions today ripple outward," Clara mused suddenly, her eyes searching the middle distance beyond their booth. "Every conversation, every step, it all adds up. Imagine the impact. A world where justice isn't just a goal, but a certainty." Jerome regarded her, not just a legal partner but a comrade in the truest sense. Her words encapsulated the dreams they both worked towards, a shared future written in the lexicon of courage and action. He was reminded that change, though sometimes slow, was inevitable when fueled by relentless hope. "We'll get there," he replied, conviction solid in his voice. "Each story, one by one, is another building block. We're adding to the foundation with every word spoken, every truth revealed." Their conversation meandered through reflections, aspirations, and small stories of incidental kindness moments that reinforced the tangible sense of all they were attempting to achieve. This was their shared ethos, a tapestry woven of continuous progress, fueled by determination and the belief in a just future. As they lingered over their cups, the city outside began to don its nighttime coat of lights, shimmering in patterns both familiar and novel. The cafe, a haven in its warmth, temporarily shielded them from the world's harsh demands, if only for a moment longer. Time seemed both fleeting and expansive, tied to the concept of moving forward, yet grounded in the significance of now. Jerome cherished these moments, drawing strength from the quiet resolve and unspoken bonds shared with Clara and others like Herthos, who tirelessly fought the good fight. As the evening unfolded and patrons slowly drifted toward their own homes, Jerome and Clara understood that today's significant steps were but a fraction of the journey ahead. There would be more conversations, more days spent sifting truth from rhetoric, navigating the channels carved by their predecessors, determined to widen those paths. The time finally came to leave this peaceful enclave, their hearts bolstered by shared resolve. They stepped back into the night, the stars above winking silently in encouragement as they resumed their path. Tomorrow waited with its complex tapestry of challenges and promises, a tomorrow they were building, stitch by stitch, through steadfast action and unwavering belief in equity and justice. And beneath the blanket of night, as the city enveloped Jerome and Clara once more, each whispered vow charted another course for their journey, a testament to eternity's promise of truth prevailing amidst darkness, forever finding its way to the light. The wind whispered secrets of the city as Jerome and Clara walked away from the comfort of the cafe, the cool night air invigorating their steps. Each stride seemed to echo with the latent energy of the day's accomplishments and tomorrow's potential. The streets, still bustling, now carried a different tempo, infused with the gentle rhythm of lives temporarily intertwined and the stories that wove them together. As they ventured deeper into the heart of the city, the familiar sounds of urban life enveloped them. Cars passed by, their headlights casting fleeting shadows that danced along the pavement before melting into the night. The distant laughter of a group echoed from a nearby alley, a reminder of the city's perpetual pulsy symphony of existence that continued unabated despite the battles fought within its bounds. Jerome's mind floated back to the courtroom, a cauldron of emotion and revelation where stories were laid bare and truths coaxed into light. The day had been a whirlwind, each moment layered with intricacies, weaving a narrative of justice sought and dignity reclaimed. Yet, as he walked, he knew this narrative was still unfolding, its end not yet written, but poised at the cusp of transformation. Clara's voice, warm and knowing, interrupted his thoughts. Tomorrow's hearings will be crucial, Jerome. We're shifting the perspective, one voice at a time. I saw it today, the way people were listening. Really, listening. He glanced at her, her confidence acting as a buoy in the shifting seas of advocacy they navigated. It's more than just listening, Clara. It's comprehension. They're starting to understand that this isn't just about one man's fight, countless others. Her nod was one of agreement and shared understanding, the recognition of a truth that had become their shared mission. As they turned a corner, the courthouse where so much had transpired loomed silently in the skyline, its silhouette a constant reminder of duty and resolve. Do you remember when we started all this? Clara asked, her eyes reflecting both nostalgia and hope. Back then, it seemed like we were fighting shadows. Now, it feels like we're making real changes, tangible and impactful. Jerome's smile was one of acknowledgement, his memory pulling threads of past conversations and plans that seemed so daunting at the onset. I remember, he said, his voice a quiet counterpoint to their solidity. It felt like shouting into a void, but now it feels like the void is starting to echo back. Their path was illuminated by streetlights, each one a beacon casting light not just on their journey, but on the wider struggle for equity. It was an odyssey defined not just by them two advocates pushing boundaries, but by the myriad voices that had contributed to this collective crescendo, each story an essential note in the harmony of justice achieved. They arrived at a park, the benches and trees silhouette like guardians against the night sky. Here, the sounds of the city converged, the gentle rustling of leaves, the distant swell of traffic, and the occasional murmur of others finding refuge in its open expanse. Jerome and Clara paused, their outlines framed against the backdrop of an illuminated cityscape. Here, under the open sky, the memories of today's proceedings mingled with the hushed promises of tomorrow, creating a canvas of potential painted by aspiration and action. Jerome turned to Clara, his voice carrying the weight of shared experiences and the lightness of renewed hope. We're setting the stage, Clara. Each step we take, each voice we amplify, it's building something real. Her gaze was steady, her smile encouraging. And we'll keep building. For as long as it takes, we'll keep forging these paths until justice is more than just a word, until it's a reality for all, without exception. Their pact was more than spoken words. It was an unyielding promise threaded through every action they took, every challenge overcome. It was a commitment to the unfurling narrative that neither time nor resistance could silence, a narrative sweeping through the corridors of power, transforming what had been opaque into clarity. As they finally parted ways under the moonlit canopy, Jerome's spirit felt renewed, a fortification drawn from companionship, shared dreams, and the knowledge that their efforts resonated far beyond the confines of personal ambition. He watched Clara fade into the night's gentle embrace, her strength and vision paralleling each star above. Turning slowly, his path homeward was filled with the solemn excitement of a story in motion where justice stood not just as a goal, but a beacon for which to strive relentlessly. And as Jerome walked beneath the sprawling arms of the city he called home, each step was infused with hope tendered by action, an eternal guardian whose tenacity promised that in the performance of advocacy, there would always be a place for those willing to fight for the change it promised. The night wrapped its cool arms around Jerome as he continued homeward, the cityscape slowly giving way to quieter streets lined with stoic brownstones and whispering trees. Each footfall seemed to strike a chord in the symphony of his thoughts attuned to the rhythms of the day's triumphs and the possibilities that lay ahead. As he neared his neighborhood, the familiar creak of wrought iron gates and the occasional bark of a dog provided a comforting backdrop, a melody of ordinary life, anchoring him amidst extraordinary challenges. These streets had witnessed countless comings and goings, the mundane tapestry upon which he now sought to embroider threads of justice and transformation. Jerome's mind, ever a canvas of reflection, drifted to the events of the courtroom days. The proceedings held a narrative richness that accused and acquitted in equal measure, each argument and testimony a step toward revealing deeper truths. The legal maneuvers had felt less like battles and more like choreography and intricate dance, aiming to uncover justice hidden in systemic shadow. He thought of Clara and the fragile balance they maintained, their relationship a medley of shared goals and relentless perseverance. Together, they had arrived at this point of precipice where stories met action, forging a path forward with the confidence that could only come from mutual trust. With each step, Jerome revisited moments of empowerment from the day, instances where silence was broken, and voices long muted by fear or oppression found resonance in the echo chamber of justice. It was a rhythm, a chorus, that underscored their collective journey, propelling them toward further pursuits and ever-changing vistas. As he reached his home, the familiar stoop stood unchanged, yet imbued with the day's hard-won insights. It was more than a physical return. It was a spiritual touchstone, grounding him before the tide of what was still to come. He lingered there, beneath the porch light's watchful glow, contemplating the distillation of advocacy into a form tangible yet inexhaustible. Settling inside, Jerome was greeted by the gentle hum of domesticity, the creaks in the floorboards, the subtle groan of plumbing, all marking their presence with a familiarity that caressed the senses. His sanctuary embraced him, offering a brief respite from the tumult beyond its walls. Seeking solace in routine, he poured a glass of water, watching condensation weave trails down its surface, temporary paths reminiscent of the ephemeral nature of progress. As he drank, the cool water quenched not only his thirst, but renewed his resolve. In the quietude that followed, Jerome found himself drawn once more to photographs lining the mantel. Their stillness, an ode to memories relentless in their sturdiness, juxtaposed against the fluidity of unfolding justice. His gaze rested on an image capturing a moment from the past, himself alongside comrades, each man's expression one of defiance, steeled by dedication. That same defiance, a frequency resonating through time, carried forward into his present Mishona rebellion against apathy and injustice, a demand for where respect is not granted but is due by law and humanity. As the night deepened, Jerome's thoughts turned toward tomorrow, landscape yet to be traversed, promising both challenge and potential. The unseen chapters were poised to unfold, demanding energy and action beyond what seemed imaginable, yet entirely essential. The quiet house offered tranquility, a rare commodity amidst the upheaval of lives in pursuit of rectitude. Jerome reclined into its embrace, cocooned momentarily from the weight of the world, the contours of the room familiar and reassuring. But even in rest, the exigencies of advocacy continued to pulse within him, a vibrant symphony of hope that had no silence, no pause, only crescendo. Tomorrow awaited, demanding more than words spoken or laws reformed. It required hearts steadfast and voices unwavering, carrying forward the sacred promise sewn into the day's fabric. Before surrendering to sleep, Jerome whispered a vow renewed, a declaration to continue the march, each step resilient and undaunted, a testament to the fellowship of those like Clara who walked beside him. Their journey, though arduous, was fueled by the hope that justice realized would become more than dream, becoming the reality for all who dared to dream as fiercely as they strode. As the world outside hushed in preparation for dawn, Jerome felt the eternal rhythm of his cause taper into the cradle of night's embrace, soothing yet urgent, promise and a call to forge tomorrow brighter than it had ever been before. Morning seeped through the cracks of night, infusing the city with a subtle glow that promised renewal and fresh opportunities. The air carried a crispness that invigorated Jerome as he stepped out into the unfolding day, his resolve knotted tightly with the threads of yesterday's victories and challenges. His path to the courthouse was now familiar, a ritual passage through the streets that had borne silent witness to his journey. The city, alive with the gentle cadence of waking life, mirrored his own rhythm as he moved with purpose, each step echoing determination and the quiet strength of those who had walked alongside him. As he approached the courthouse, its stone facade sturdy and solemn, Jerome felt the gravity of the day beckoning. Today promised a continuation of the narratives they had begun to weave, stories interlaced with justice and the steadfast pursuit of change. This building, with its heavy doors and high arches, stood as a guardian at the intersection of truth and aspiration. Inside, the air was already taut with anticipation, charged by the whispered exchanges among those present. Lawyers prepared their briefs with thin, rustling authority while the audience settled into their seats, each face a tapestry of expectations and silent prayers for fairness. Jerome joined Clara in the hallway, her presence an enduring anchor amidst the swirling anticipation. She stood with a dossier of documents, the physical representation of their ongoing fight. Her eyes, sharp and clear, met his with a nod that spoke volumes. They were ready. "Today, we push further," she said, her voice low, yet resolute. "The groundwork is laid. Now, it's time to start seeing real traction." Jerome smiled, drawing confidence from her unwavering resolve. "We've got this, Clara." Every word, every moment, it's all paving the path. Together, they entered the courtroom, a place where voices could rise and fall, truth could be contested, and justice painstakingly sought. The courtroom itself was an unassuming arena, the serenity of its design contrasting sharply with the intensity of the battles waged within. The proceedings began swiftly, the rhythm of the session unfolding with practiced precision. Lawyers spoke in careful, calculated tones, their arguments akin to the weaving of a complex tapestry, each strand vital to the emerging picture. The day became a dance, a coordinated effort to reveal the multifaceted truth obscured by layers of bias and prejudice. As the morning wore into afternoon, Jerome felt the weight of anticipation shift. Each testimony was not just a recounting, but a reclamation, a declaration against systemic neglect, each word distilling the essence of struggle into the purity of advocacy. He watched as witnesses took the stand, their stories fortifying the framework built by untold lives seeking recognition and respect. Their voices, each carrying the burden of their experiences, rung out in a space demanding acknowledgement. It was a mosaic of perseverance, each piece a testament to enduring spirit. The day's pinnacle arrived, with Clara setting forth a powerful summation, a succinct encapsulation of hard truths and undeniable realities. Her words were not mere argument, they were an incantation, a call to action, underscored by the resonance of heartfelt conviction. "Injustice speaks only in silence," she implored the room, every phrase both indictment and promise. "Today, we exceed this silence, allowing echoes of truth to resound." As her words settled into the courtroom's stillness, Jerome sensed the subtleties of change beginning to stir, a collective realization that these proceedings were more than perfunctory rituals. They were manifestations of something transformative. Judge Peterson, presiding with a gravity befitting the magnitude of the case, remained pensive, a custodian to the dignity of justice, straining against the confines of its own precedents. His decision would come later, yet the air hummed with the solemnity of its weight and import. The session closed with a sense of quiet dignity, a respectful pause in the continuum of their mission. As the room emptied, the echoes of testimony lingered, resonating with the unending call for fairness, a cadence that would guide their steps beyond the courthouse doors. Stepping outside, Jerome and Clara were met by the renewed embrace of the city's hustly, stark contrast to the contained intensity within. The sky above, wide and hopeful, mirrored their shared anticipation. The horizon, a canvas on which tomorrow was yet to be painted. "Today made a difference, Jerome," Clara assured, her tone hopeful. "It's a turning point. I can feel it." He nodded, the echoes of the courtroom still alive within him, reminding him of the unrelenting drive for resolution. "We're closer than ever, Clara, one step at a time. We're getting there." And in the gentle glow of evening's approach, they knew their journey, though fraught with challenges yet to come, was a crusade defined not by limitations, but by possibilities. Each step another brushstroke on the expansive canvas of justice, an unyielding promise to illuminate and uplift a world striving toward equity. As the shadows lengthened and the afternoon light began to soften, Jerome and Clara parted ways, each carrying the day's momentum into their respective evenings. Jerome walked with a measured pace, his mind layered with reflections of the courtroom's testimonies, each story, a powerful thread in the fabric of justice they were weaving. The streets were alive, pulsing with the rhythm of the city as it transitioned from day to night. The electric hum of activity around him mirrored the energy still coursing through his veins. People moved like currents, each face a vessel of stories untold, experiences shared in the silent language of humanity. Jerome was part of this tapestry, their common thread binding them to a shared destiny of change. Navigating through the familiar avenues, his path took him to a street corner where a crowd had gathered. Drawn by curiosity and the pull of community, he approached, sensing something more meaningful than mere coincidence waiting within the throng. Here, beneath the watchful embrace of streetlights, a small group had assembled around an impromptu stage, a wooden platform that served as a pulpit for voices seeking to be heard. A young activist stood before the crowd, her voice bright and clear, cutting through the ambient noise with conviction. Jerome watched, captivated by the passion in her words, each a call to action resonating with the audience. Her rallying cry spoke of injustices to be dismantled, of the power inherent in standing united against systems designed to silence. It was a performance that transcended mere speech, transforming the assembly into an electrified force for change. Inspired, Jerome stepped closer to the edge of the crowd, his presence unassuming yet entirely present. He felt the familiar pull of kinship in her message, a reflection of the battles he waged within the courthouse, now rippling outward to touch the spirits of those gathered here. As the young woman finished, her closing remarks met with applause. A man stepped forward to offer his own testimony. His voice was weathered but resolute, recounting a personal history marked by resilience and defiance, themes that mirrored those Jerome had heard in the courtroom that very day. The gathering was a testament to shared experience, a locus where individuals became a collective force. Here, standing side by side, they shed light on the pathways they carved through the darkness, each story a stepping stone on the journey toward equity. Jerome felt the thrumming connection to these individuals, a vibrant current linking them to the collective consciousness. In every gaze and every nod, he sensed an unspoken contract, a commitment to carry forth their stories, amplifying their reach and embedding them within society's consciousness. Enveloped by the crowd's energy, a man near Jerome turned to him, recognition flickering in his eyes. "Hey, aren't you the guy from the courthouse today?" he asked, his tone friendly and curious. Jerome nodded, acknowledging the connection. "That's right," he replied, his voice steady, infused with the solidity of shared purpose. "I was there, standing up for justice, just like all of us here." The man's face lit up with appreciation, a moment of solidarity shared amidst the bustling evening. "Watching you today gave me hope," he said earnestly. "Hope that things can change if we keep pushing, if we stand together." Jerome smiled, the warmth of encouragement rooting him to his core mission. They can, they will. It's moments like this, people coming together, that fuel real change. Their brief exchange fueled the shared energy of promise, the tacit understanding that an awakening was at hand, not just within the sterile walls of power, but within the hearts of every person committed to transformation. As the gathering continued, Jerome remained a silent witness, absorbing the multitude of voices lifting together into the evening sky. Each story shared, each dream voiced, tethered him more tightly to the unyielding spirit coursing through the urban landscape. Eventually, the crowd began to scatter, each individual carrying with them more than what they had brought, a renewed sense of purpose, a shared message carried into the sprawling web of city and beyond. As Jerome turned to continue his journey home, the night enveloped him, soft and encouraging. He walked with light steps, buoyed by the newfound strength drawn from this serendipitous encounter, knowing that the impact of their collective efforts was both profound and promising. His heart echoed the rhythm of the city, each beat a vow to keep the momentum alive. Justice, once conceptual and distant, was now within reach, each voice, each step further propelling the narrative toward its next chapter. The path home unfolded before him, familiar yet imbued with the promise of change, a testament to the power of stories uncovered and voices uplifted, forever intertwining their quests for a future where justice was not merely pursued but realized. The echoes of the crowd's fervor followed Jerome as he traversed the city streets, a living symphony of commitment that resonated with every step he took. The transition from the raw energy of the gathering to the serene ambiance of the courthouse was marked by an electrifying expectance that hummed through the air. It was here, under the weight of marble columns and the watchful eyes of justice, that today's narrative would deepen, rippling outward in waves of transformative potential. The cobblestones underfoot led him to the entrance of the courthouse, now imbued with the quiet dignity of a place well acquainted with the balancing act between truth and perception. He paused momentarily, allowing the gravity of his purpose to ground him before stepping into the hallowed halls where decisions lingered heavy in the air. The hallways, with their artful silence, whispered of the countless footsteps that had traversed them before, each pair carrying the weight of stories to be heard, decisions to be cast. Jerome joined the steady flow of lawyers, advocates, and citizens moving with purpose through the corridors, each carrying the mantle of hope aloft like a guiding star. As he neared the courtroom, Clara was already there, a figure of poise and steely determination. Her presence, like a lighthouse amidst a fog of uncertainty, fortified him, its effect as potent as tangible armor. "Morning, Jerome," she greeted, her voice wrapped in warm resolve. "How are you feeling today?" "Ready," he replied, the singular word brimming with intent, underscored by the rhythm of perseverance that had become both mantra and mission. "Good," Clara assured, her smile a brief yet powerful beacon. "We've got some important testimonies lined up. This is our chance to keep the momentum going." Each session within the courtroom was an act of revealing, an unwinding of the intricate tapestry created by testimonies, arguments, and the quiet power of silence. Jerome took his place, poised as both participant and observer, ready to engage in the unfolding narrative. As the proceedings commenced, the gavel's solemn declaration echoed throughout the room, calling order, calling truth. This was a place where silence eventually gave way to stories, where stories morphed into the lifeblood of justice. One by one, individuals took to the stand, their voices both quivering with vulnerability and vibrant with the resoluteness that comes from being heard and acknowledged. Each account resonated with themes of struggle and defiance, threading through the collective consciousness to form the tapestry of their shared journey. Today, a key witness took the stand, a figure whose experiences added a fresh dimension to the day's discourse. Her story was one of persistence within an establishment that had often relegated voices like hers to the periphery. As she spoke, the courtroom grew still, an entire room hanging on every revelation, every nuance of her narrative. Jerome listened intently, her words striking chords familiar yet necessary within him. Her bravery in the face of adversity was infectious, each sentence further unraveling systematic misconceptions, further defining the path toward reformation. As more voices took to the stand, a mosaic unfolded, testimonies contributing brushstrokes to the day's portrait of advocacy and truth. This was their essence, the reformation of institutional frameworks through unrelenting resilience, the uncovering of layers often shrouded in silence. Judge Peterson, with his discerning gaze and measured patience, guided the session with quiet authority. This was a threshold, a place where judiciary met humanity, where discernment shattered the confines of precedent, clearing the path for justice to emerge anew. In each pause and reflection within the courtroom, Jerome felt the undercurrent of history in the making. It was as though time held its breath, seeing in these moments possibilities of redemption, embodied within personal stories unified by the drive for fairness. As the session drew to a close, the ebb and flow of shared stories lingered, a testament that justice, once intangible, was becoming something palpable, something profoundly felt in the hearts of those who dared to stand. With the gavel's finality, the room slowly began to empty. Each person carried a piece of the day's discussions with them, whispers of transformation that would echo beyond these walls, finding resonance in hearts around the city. Jerome and Clara emerged once more into the embrace of the outside world, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows as if marking the passage of newfound hope across the courthouse steps. Today had been pivotal, another block in a growing foundation built upon stories voiced, truths shared, and change sought. As they stood together, beneath the expansive sky beginning to glow with the promise of evening, Jerome felt the vital hum of hope echo once more, a solidarity forged in the heart of struggle. "Whenever I leave here, I'm reminded," Clara began thoughtfully, breaking the comfortable silence. "We're doing something bigger than ourselves, Jerome. That's what keeps me going." Her words resonated deeply, affirming his own conviction that each day carried forward the symphony of change, a harmony only heard by those willing to listen, to engage, and to act. With that resolve etched into their minds, they parted ways for the night, each step not just a physical movement, but a commitment to the narrative they were inscribing on the world. The path ahead remained challenging, but embedded within it was the ever-flickering light of justice, a beacon both guiding and guarding their journey together toward a horizon alive with potential and reformation. The glow of the late afternoon sun gradually melted into the deep blues of early evening, casting a serene ambiance over the bustling city. Jerome stood at the threshold of his apartment, reflecting on the day's proceedings. It had been a day marked by courage and the relentless pursuit of justice, a narrative that had come alive with every word spoken in the courtroom. Inside, his home welcomed him with its familiar warmth, an oasis of calm away from the world's clamor. The evening's quiet was a balm, offering a rare moment of stillness to process the cascade of stories that had unfolded earlier. The anticipation of the day's encounters lingered like a delicate perfume, threading through his thoughts with vivid clarity. He moved to the small kitchen, seeking comfort in the act of making dinner. The rhythmic motions were meditative, grounding him in the present and offering a gentle pivot from the courtroom's intensity. As he prepared the meal, he replayed the testimonies, each revisitation a reminder of the shared resolve binding him to this journey. The voice of today's key witness, with her powerful testimony, resonated deeply. Her courage emboldened the quiet narrative of hope and transformation, the kind that transcended words and rooted itself in action. Jerome was reminded of the quiet strength inherent in amplifying such voices, a strength that made each struggle worthwhile. With dinner concluded, he settled into his favorite armchair by the window, the city now a constellation of lights, blinking with life against the darkness. Jerome reached for his phone, scrolling through messages from allies and supporters, each conveying solidarity, each a brick in the wall of unwavering support building around him. A particular message caught his attention. It was from Rebecca, a fellow advocate with whom he'd crossed paths at numerous events and rallies, a kindred spirit bound by mutual respect and shared ambitions. Her message was succinct, yet filled with warmth. Your fight today echoes far beyond the courtroom, Jerome. Proud to stand with you. There was solace in those words, a reminder of the broader community interwoven through shared convictions. His response was equally heartfelt, a digital handshake affirming their commitment to carry forward the mantle of justice together. The night unfolded with a tranquil pace, allowing space for contemplation and reflection. Jerome reflected upon the emotional tapestry of the day, a blend of triumph and challenge woven into the fabric of his ongoing quest. Each incremental step forward felt like a collective leap, buoyed by the voices that had joined his own. As his thoughts meandered through the day's events, the phone rang, piercing the soft quietness around him. Tasha, the young reporter, had called. Her enthusiasm was palpable even through the receiver. Jerome, she began, the familiarity evident in her tone. I was there today, listening. The stories, the atmosphere, it was electrifying. That's the thing about truth, Jerome replied, his voice steady. Once it's spoken into existence, it gains its own momentum, and with allies like you, it travels farther than we might ever realize. Tasha's voice was imbued with admiration. I'm working on the piece now. It'll capture what happened today, not just the facts, but the spirit of it. People need to hear. They need to know what you all are fighting for. Her dedication mirrored Jerome's own, an unwavering commitment to storytelling as a tool for enlightenment and change. He was heartened by the knowledge that their narrative would continue to reach wider audiences, sowing seeds of awareness and action. As Jerome ended the call, contentment settled over him. The past, although often grueling, was a rich tapestry of battles fought and won, evolving continuously into stories that became frameworks of a justice-driven future. Outside, the city continued its endless dance cars passed by in rivulets of light, pedestrians moved with purpose, and above it all, the sky continued to spread its ink across the horizontal canvas upon which limitless paths could be drawn. Jerome drew strength from the harmony between his quiet sanctuary and the vibrant world outside. It was within this space he crafted his plans, fueled by the resilience of those whose stories he carried with him into the courtroom, into life. Before surrendering to sleep, he paused by the window, a silent salute to the city's energy and the dreams it kept cocooned within its embrace. He whispered a promise to the night, a vow to continue the fight, fortified by the knowledge that he was never alone in his journey. As slumber wrapped him in safety, the work yet to come shimmered on the edge of dawn, a new day, poised to embrace the unwavering march toward justice, beckoning with promises of renewal, inspired by the shared humanity beating steadily within the heart of advocacy. As dawn unfurled across the horizon, casting its gentle hues over the city, Jerome awoke to the quiet assurance of a new dawn brimming with unspoken possibilities and the ever-present promise of justice pursued. The world outside murmured with life, the city's cadence harmonizing with his own sense of renewed purpose. His morning unfolded with the deliberate ease of routine, a foundation upon which his thoughts could gather and sharpen for the tasks ahead. The familiar ritual of breakfast, the comforting warmth of coffee, and the rhythmic hum of morning radio provided a backdrop against which his resolve reaffirmed itself, stronger with each passing moment. Today's agenda was marked by a different kind of anticipation. The courtroom would welcome an array of testimonies layered with nuance, each possessing the potential to illuminate shadows cast long ago. The voices that would fill the chamber were not just participants in their individual dramas, but architects of a future built on equitable foundations. As Jerome prepared to leave for the courthouse, a quick glance at his phone revealed messages of encouragement, reminders of the steadfast solidarity surrounding him. Family, friends, fellow advocates all lending their voices to the chorus of support that propelled him forward. On the street, the city welcomed him with its characteristic vigor, the symphony of morning activity creating a patchwork quilt of human experience. Jerome moved with purpose through the familiar landscape, each step a testament to his dedication, a commitment to reach beyond personal victories toward a collective awakening. Arriving at the courthouse, he was greeted by the sight of Clara in conversation with a cluster of colleagues. Her face, framed by determination and an infectious optimism, offered both reassurance and unity against an often daunting fight. She spotted him approaching and waved him over, the group becoming a congregation of resolve and collaborative ambition. "Ready for another day?" Clara asked, her words laden with the promise of action. "More than ready," Jerome replied, their unspoken alliance enveloping him with a warmth that came from shared purpose. As they entered the courthouse, the familiar ebb and flow of professional hustle surrounded a bustling choreography of legal minds preparing to engage in the transformational dance of justice once more. The corridors, a veritable artery of anticipation, pulsed with stories yet to be told. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was charged with a palpable energy, an expectancy that suggested the day would deliver moments both revelatory and enduring. The benches filled with faces both familiar and new, each a testament to the community of allies rising to challenge the status quo. Today's session opened with the testimony of a man whose story reached deep into the heart of the matters at hand. His experiences spoke not just to personal resilience, but to the broader, often unseen struggles woven into the societal fabric. Each word he articulated was both a confession and a manifesto, filled with the raw authenticity of lived truth. The testimonies that followed delivered their own powerful narratives, each contributing a vital piece to the larger dialogue they sought to fuel. Jerome listened, his focus unbreaking, his role as advocate consuming every nuance of the discourse. In the intermissions between testimonies, Jerome took note of the courtroom dynamics, the tension of anticipation, the reflective calm in moments of pause. These interludes, filled with exchanged glances and quiet conversations, were breeding grounds for solidarity and mutual understanding. As the hours unfolded, Judge Peterson maintained a solemn yet attentive demeanor, his presence a bastion of impartiality and integrity. His commitment to fairness was a guiding force, allowing the courtroom to become a crucible where inequity was slowly transformed into burgeoning justice. Near midday, the proceedings reached a crescendo, a summation of the morning's revelations presented with clarity and conviction by Clara. Her voice, a blend of determination and empathy, painted a picture of the world as it could be reshaped by the echoes of every story courageously shared. And today, we are all witnesses to the power of speaking truth to silence, Clara concluded, her gaze sweeping the room, meeting eyes and forging connections that extended beyond mere legal proceedings. "We stand united, stronger because we stand together." The sentiment hung in the air, resonating with every individual, present a promise of continued action, an oath to wield their combined strength against the structures that needed dismantling. As the session drew to a close, Jerome felt the weight of progress tangible, if yet incomplete, but imbued with the limitless potential of collective will. It was a testament to their relentless pursuit of justice, a narrative unbroken, ever advancing. Exiting the courthouse, he and Clara were greeted by the afternoon sun, its brightness a metaphor for the hope they nurtured, the changes they believed possible. As they walked, there was an unspoken acknowledgement of the day's significance, satisfaction in steps taken, and a willful determination to proceed into the journey that awaited them just beyond the current horizon. And in every step, Jerome carried with him the fire ignited by each testimony. Each promise of justice fulfilled a truth as immutable and enduring as their resolve, a legacy not just for them, but for all who would follow. The vibrant energy of the afternoon wrapped itself around Jerome and Clara as they stepped out of the courthouse, alive with the momentum gathered throughout the morning's stirring testimonies. The city unfolded before them, spooling out its tales through the bustling streets of vivid theater where personal and collective narratives converged. As they moved away from the courthouse steps, a tangible sense of progress accompanied them, carried not only in their strides but in the shared glances of those who passed each a silent acknowledgement, a shared understanding that the wheels of justice had begun rolling ever more insistently. "I feel it, Jerome," Clara said, her voice suffused with the exhaustion and satisfaction that comes from a hard-won battle. Today wasn't just another day, it was a catalyst. Her conviction mirrored Jerome's own. Every testimony heard within those solemn walls added another layer of intensity and urgency to their cause, binding them more tightly to the ever-expanding community of advocates and allies. "I agree," he replied. "It's like watching a dam break free, allowing all those voices to flood out and carve new paths." Their conversation carried them down familiar streets, where everyday life continued its gentle rhythm amidst the city's formidable architecture. Buildings, awash in the late afternoon sun, stood like ancient sentinels overseeing the gradual revolution stirring within. Ahead, a cafe they'd frequented, known for being a hub of lively discourse and unguarded reflection, glanced warmly through its open windows, a place where ideas often took root and grew, nurtured by spirited discussion and the camaraderie of kindred spirits. Inside, the space buzzed with the gentle hum of conversation and the scent of freshly brewed coffee. They found a table by the window, the world outside a tapestry of vibrant life framed by passing figures and vehicles. Settling into seats that felt like old friends, Jerome and Clara rested in the pocket of time that was wholly theirs. It was here, amidst the comforting ambiance, that they frequently revisited the day's labors, finding insights and forging new strategies for the steps ahead. A notebook in hand, Clara began jotting down thoughts, a chorus of ideas sparked by the morning's testimony. "We need to highlight the connections between these cases," she mused. "They're not just isolated incidents. They paint a broader picture." Jerome nodded, sipping a warm mug of coffee that reinvigorated his senses. "Exactly. We need people to see the forest, not just the trees." Today was a reminder of how deep-rooted the issues are and how far-reaching the solutions must be. As the conversation evolved, they found themselves occasionally drifting into comfortable, silence-shared moments of contemplation wrapped in the cafe's tranquil atmosphere. Each pause an opportunity to reflect, dream, and steel themselves further against the long road of advocacy that beckoned. Around them, familiar faces from the courthouse entered, creating a vibrant blend of conversations that ebbed and flowed like the tides. It was a microcosm of their collective mission on, ever-expanding network of voices committed to real change. Jerome was reminded, amidst the warm refuge of this gathering place, that their fight for justice was as much about preserving humanity within process as it was about reshaping external structures. It was about weaving compassion into the fabric of reform and allowing that compassion to guide their hands at every juncture. Emerging from her brief reverie, Clara leaned in, her eyes alight with determination. "You know, I'm convinced today marked a turning point." She gestured with her pen, as if outlining invisible paths they had yet to traverse. "We're no longer just reacting, we're shaping the narrative." Jerome grinned, deeply appreciative of her resolute spirit. It was this shared vision that drew them together, a bond formed in the crucible of past battles and tempered by the fires of ongoing struggle. Their journey, though arduous, was propelled by the belief that each effort, no matter how modest, contributed to the mosaic of justice. They lingered in the cafe longer, swapping ideas and anecdotes until the golden sun outside began its slow descent, casting elongated shadows through the windows and imbuing the room with a gentle glow. When they finally rose to leave, it was with the renewed purpose that often followed such rich dialogue, a testament to the power of kindred alliances. The remaining light of day promised further clarity and, with it, the potential for even greater progress. As they stepped back into the brisk evening air, Jerome and Clara walked toward the horizon, charged with the knowledge that their quest was not just transforming a system, but touching lives. Each interaction, each testimony, a promise that tomorrow would be brighter than today. And in their footsteps lay the possibility of justice unfurled, resonating with every measure of darkness the dusk wrapped around them, fueling their hearts with the luminous certainty that even the longest journey must begin with a single, determined step toward the light. The dusk settled like a soft sigh over the city, the sky a tapestry of deepening hues as Jerome and Clara navigated their way through streets illuminated by the glow of streetlights. The cool evening air carried with it a sense of quiet potential, an unspoken promise that filled their steps with purpose and the comforting knowledge of battles fought with integrity. Their walk back to their respective homes was introspective, the journey underpinned by the rhythm of shared ideas and the comfortable silence that often accompanies those engaged in pursuits greater than themselves. Each step seemed lighter, buoyed by the weightless resolve that comes when every action has purpose, every decision a deliberate venture toward enduring change. Jerome found himself lost in thought, the influence of the day subtly unfurling within him a gentle unraveling of the threads that had woven his spirit tightly during the courtroom's proceedings. The day had been rich, with moments that hummed with the weight of potential, each a testament to the complexities of human experience and the courage it takes to stand truthful within it. Clara, walking beside him, seemed to share in his reflection, her own presence a peaceful current lapping at the shores of progress they sought to reach. Her footsteps paralleled his, their synchrony a testament to the alignment they'd developed over months of collaboration and mutual support. When they paused at a familiar intersection where their paths diverged, Clara turned with a smile that bespoke fatigue tempered by triumph. "We did good today, Jerome," she said, breaking the contented silence. "Every testimony shared is another light in the shadow, a beacon for those who felt unseen." Jerome regarded her closely, appreciating the quiet strength that defined her. "I keep thinking about that," he admitted, "how each voice adds to the chorus, a song of resistance that just keeps growing louder." Her nod was one of agreement, her gaze steady and filled with the warmth of possibilities they had touched that day. "And it will keep growing, with every story we have the courage to tell," she affirmed, her conviction carrying the weight of a promise forged in the crucible of this campaign. The camaraderie that enveloped them was a warm, silent embrace, one filled with the knowledge that their journey, however arduous, was one shared by many peers and allies bound by a collective resolve to rewrite narratives and reshape realities. With a shared glance that spoke more than words could convey, they parted ways, their paths leading toward homes filled with the comforts and rituals of normalcismal havens of respite from a world steeped in complexity. As Jerome continued his journey alone, the sense of resolve that had guided him seemed to glow within, each heartbeat a reminder of the allies standing by his side, each step a vow to continue pushing forward. Arriving home, he found solace in the familiar, its quietude a canvas for reflection and the setting for dreams nurtured in the currency of justice. The weight of the day shed itself gently as he settled in, the comforts of home embracing him while he sifted through the events that had unfolded. Dinner was a simple affair, its routine offering a momentary diversion from the gravity of the courtroom. As he ate, Jerome reflected on the faces and voices that had colored the kaleidoscope of human resilience that had sparked the embers of hope within, their warmth infusing his resolve with renewed vitality. With the day's end drawing near, he found himself reaching for his journal, a practice he'd begun during military service and continued ever since. It was within these pages that he captured the essence of life's lessons, a chronicle that bore witness to past victories and highlighted aspirations yet unmet. Tonight, the pages greeted him with an eagerness that mirrored his own, the fresh canvas ready to absorb the reflections of a day dedicated to the pursuit of justice. Jerome's pen moved steadily, the ink imbuing his thoughts with permanence. Today, we lit the way forward, illuminating paths long hidden in shadow. Each voice shared, a new strand in our tapestry of change, an enduring reminder that courage finds its music in truth, its rhythm in unity. Satisfied, he closed the journal, the words tucked safely within its covers, destined to become a part of the legacy they fought to build. In those pages, he captured not just the chronology of events, but the beating heart of their collective mission, a legacy of hope entwined with perseverance. The night outside deepened, casting an inky veil over the city, yet within his home, a light remained, a beacon of certainty, fueled by the accumulated strength of countless stories. Jerome prepared for rest. The promise of the morrow settled over him like a comforting cloak, a pledge to stand and speak and act in the unwavering pursuit of justice. And as he lay beneath the sheltering sky of his room, the world gently revolved, carrying within it the dreams and struggles of all those striving for a dawn that promised fairness and freedom, a dawn for which Jerome was more than prepared to fight. Jerome drifted into the gentle arms of slumber, the city's hum replaced by the soft symphony of dreams that played out in the theater of his mind. There, amidst the drifting clouds of subconscious thought, visions of a future intertwined with today's victories played out, a world colored by justice, painted through the courage of countless voices. The morning light, delicate yet insistent, gently pulled him from the depths of sleep, heralding the arrival of another day infused with untold possibilities. Jerome awoke with the peaceful clarity that follows a profound rest, the echoes of yesterday's triumphs accompanying him as he rose to embrace the dawn. His morning routine unfolded with the grace of habit, each act a meditation that allowed his thoughts to gather and focus. The reflection in the mirror showcased a man both weary and revitalized, his gaze steady with the determination of one who understood the weight and the worth of his mission. With breakfast concluded and his mind aligned with purpose, Jerome set out for the courthouse once more. The city was alive under the early sun, its streets a canvas of human movement laced with the sounds of everyday life, a vibrant backdrop to the narratives of justice being shaped within its bounds. The courthouse loomed ahead, an architectural testament to the gravity of the task at hand, a place where truth was both sought and contested, and where the mettle of individuals was measured by their willingness to confront the entrenched mechanisms of power. Inside, the corridors buzzed with activity, a microcosm of anticipation and resolve. Lawyers, clerks, and witnesses mingled in the shared space, each bringing their own narratives to add to the tapestry of stories cultivated within these walls. Jerome found Clara already present, engrossed in conversation with a colleague. Her presence was as anchoring as ever, a lighthouse guiding him through the procedural haze that often accompanied their mission. She turned, her expression brightening as she acknowledged him. "Ready to tackle another day?" Clara asked, her tone a harmonious blend of determination and encouragement. "Absolutely," Jerome replied, his voice resonant with the quiet assurance that came from witnessing yesterday's momentum spill into today. "Let's keep the forward motion going." The courtroom awaited, an arena not just of legal jousts, but a sacred space where the art of narrative wove through the fabric of evidence and argument. Jerome entered with the same reverence he always did, conscious of the power and potential breathed into life here. Today's proceedings began with the testimony of a woman whose experiences cast a piercing light onto the systemic issues they'd been unraveling. Her voice, steady but charged with emotion, pierced the courtroom's quietude, recounting a tale of resilience and injustice that mirrored the universal struggle for recognition and respect. Her story, colored by persistence in the face of adversity, resonated deeply with Jerome. It was a narrative both unique and familiar, an echo of the countless testimonies that had constructed the foundation of their shared effort. Throughout the day, similar testimonies followed, each contributing to the resonance of awareness, a growing chorus of individuals whose truths illuminated the flaws within systems of power. Jerome listened intently, absorbing each account with the understanding that these stories were the true catalysts for change. Judge Peterson, poised at the helm of proceedings, navigated the complexities with discernment and fairness. His guidance was a steady hand, ensuring that every voice was heard, every truth weighed with the gravity it deserved. As the session advanced, Jerome observed the subtle but undeniable shifts in attitude among those gathered. Faces once etched with skepticism now softened with understanding. It was a silent acknowledgement, a subtle nod to the transformative nature of courage and truth. The day's crescendo arrived with Clara's passionate closing statement, call to action framed not just by the aspirations within the courtroom, but by the reality faced by individuals beyond its doors. Her words, punctuated by sincerity, sought to bind the collective will into a force for tangible change. Our narratives, she declared, are not just tales to be told. They are blueprints for a future where justice serves not the privileged few, but the collective whole. With those words resounding in the quiet aftermath of her speech, the session drew to a close, the echo of commitment lingering as participants filed out, each carrying a piece of the day's profound engagement. Jerome and Clara exited the courthouse, the weight of the day settling lightly upon them. Outside, the sun dipped toward the horizon, bathing the city in the golden light of early evening, as if acknowledging the harmony of their efforts. "Clara, I think today we planted seeds," Jerome said, his voice reflective, yet buoyed by the certainty of their progress, "and those seeds will grow into something enduring." Her smile, warm and alive with shared triumph, met his. "We're cultivating something bigger than us, Jerome, something that's becoming a force too powerful to ignore." As they walked through the bustling streets, the city enveloped them in its embrace, each atom of its existence a testament to the potential of justice attainable. Their journey was far from over, but today's steps were foundational iron threads woven into the sprawling tapestry of their mission. Their path stretched ahead, illuminated by the pulse of dreams coming to fruition, echoing the truth that each day was not just an end, but a beginning, fueled by the courage of challenging narratives and crafting reality anew. And as they ventured forth, they knew this was more than a fight. It was an evolution, breathing life into justice through the unwavering will of those who believed. The golden light of early evening lingered as Jerome and Clara branched off from the courthouse, their forms blending with the growing shadows cast by the cityscape. The day had been a remarkable dance of narratives woven into reality, an orchestra of voices crafting resonance and understanding within the ancient halls of justice. Each step carried them deeper into the city's embrace, the ebb and flow of life swirling around them with the comforting familiarity of a cherished melody. The streets, alive with the murmur of evening activity, echoed the persistent hum of progress, a reminder that their work, though challenging, was part of a larger composition, one that played on beyond the confines of courtroom walls. "Tonight, the city feels different," Clara observed, her gaze sweeping the bustling thoroughfare. "It's as if every voice we heard today is accompanying us, amplifying the silence and speaking through it." Jerome nodded, caught in the symphony of her words. "It's tangible, isn't it? The sense of a shared pulse, a rhythm that connects us all in this journey." Their shared journey had become a pilgrimage of sorts, a path of voices that carried stories with the weight of history and the promise of transformation. It was their duty not just to amplify, but to carry these stories forward, pledging allegiance to a future not yet fully written, but rapidly taking shape. As they wove through the city, their thoughts and conversation buoyed by the day's events, they came upon a familiar neighborhood gathering, Plaza Community Center, lit warmly from within, its doors open wide to the evening air. Deciding to step inside, they found themselves enveloped by a gathering that showcased the beating heart of their mission. Inside, the atmosphere was one of community and intent. People mingled freely, faces lit with purpose and discussion fueled by a shared commitment to progress and change. It was a tableau of humanity in motion, a living testament to the promise of shared resolve. On one side of the room, a bulletin board displayed a patchwork collage of photographs, notes, and news clippings, each piece a fragment of the wider narrative shaping their aspirations. Clara moved to examine it closely, the reflection of her own journey mirrored in the diversity of stories captured there. Jerome, meanwhile, engaged in conversation with a group of young activists, their energy as infectious as it was hopeful. They spoke of movements gaining momentum, of the amplifying power of social media and grassroots organization, a testament to the new world of possibilities unfolding in their grasp. "To see change happen, real change," one of them said passionately, "we need everyone to be part of the conversation. We need stories like those we heard today, to reach wider audiences, to touch more lives." Jerome nodded in agreement, his heart resonating with the vibrancy of their conviction. "That's the beauty of this work," he replied. Every voice counts. Every voice adds weight to the scales of justice. The evening continued, conversations weaving seamlessly into shared laughter and quiet moments of collective reflection. There was something profoundly human in these connections, a reminder that amidst the complexity of systems and policies, it was people who stood at the center of the fight for equity. Clara joined Jerome after a while, her expression thoughtful, eyes lit with the joy of newfound possibilities. "This," she said, indicating the room filled with lively discussion, "this is where the magic happens. This is where the seeds we plant truly take root." They lingered, absorbing the unwritten promise carried in each voice and every plan concocted. The sense of community, of a unified heartbeat striving toward common goals, enveloped them. It was a space charged with potential, the electric hum of a world on the precipice of meaningful change. When they finally emerged from the center, the city was a tapestry of twinkling lights, the street lamps casting golden circles of warmth on pavements that echoed with feet intent on transformation. As the stars began to pepper the night sky, Jerome and Clara strolled in comfortable silence, the familiar fragrance of night-blooming flowers perfuming the cool air. It was a physical reminder of the natural cycles of growth and renewal echoing the rhythm of their mission. "Tomorrow," Jerome began, breaking the gentle quiet, a promise inherent in his words. "We continue, because every day means another story, another chance, another step forward." Clara, reflecting his resolve, nodded. "And we'll keep going until every barrier falls, every voice is heard, and justice is no longer an aspiration but a reality." With these convictions anchoring them, they walked on, side by side, their shadows stretching out before the promise of the future they yearned to shape. The path ahead was illuminated by more than streetlights. It was a journey lit by purpose, resilience, and the unwavering belief that change was not just possible but inevitable. In every step, Jerome felt the city's pulse beat alongside his own, a collective heartbeat, echoing a song of progress, each note a testament to endurance, each chord a pledge toward the dawn of equity. Their course took them onward, toward a horizon painted by dreams, rooted deeply in perseverance, a horizon inviting them to continue inscribing the narrative of justice, one story at a time, until the chorus of change was a song sung by all. The paths Jerome and Clara traversed wound seamlessly through the city's heart, bridging the distance between their aspirations and the tangible world where those dreams yearned to take form. Each stride was a physical memory, a chronicle of shared hopes, and a testament to their commitment to crafting realities birthed from whispered dreams and spoken truths. The evening unfurled around them, weaving together stories of those who had walked these paths before, names and faces, now threads in the tapestry of collective effort. The journey home felt different tonight, marked by a tapestry's richness born from the day's events, with every corner, every street lamp, a beacon lighting the way forward. As they approached the neighborhood that marked the edges of Jerome's world, the city's hum began to quiet, settling into the comforting cadence of a place familiar and cherished. The night's gentle embrace mingled with anticipatory silence, a serene interval preparing to bridge today's revelations into tomorrow's promise. Arriving at Jerome's doorstep, Clara paused, the softness of the evening providing a space for reflection and connection. There, beneath a canopy of whispered stars, they lingered, the gravity of their shared experience tethering them to a strength that promised renewal even amidst fatigue. "This journey," Clara began, her voice the quiet timbre of evening, "it's more than what happens inside those walls, isn't it? It's everywhere we're taking it, the voices we're amplifying, the conversations we're starting." Jerome met her gaze, the acknowledgement of shared toil and triumph, a refuge as potent as the home he stood before. "Every step is a story, Clara," he replied, a smile softening the certainty of his words. "Every day adds a new page, each step a promise that justice will find its place." Their companionship was a bond woven by the threads of purpose and camaraderie, a tapestry held together not just by shared battles, but by the quiet hope of transformation well within reach. It was a reminder that while progress was collective, it was also deeply personal, touching lives and igniting change person by person. "I'll see you tomorrow," Clara said softly, the promise of another day wrapped gently in her farewell. "There are more voices to hear, more stories to foster." Jerome nodded, the resolve within him echoing her sentiment. "Same time, same place," he replied, the simplicity of the phrase carrying the weight of their enduring commitment. With a final exchange of warmth, Clara melted into the night's canvas, her steps sure and shadows stretched toward destinations familiar and necessary. Jerome watched her leave, the sight a testament to shared strength, a beacon lighting the path ahead. Turning to the stillness of his home, Jerome felt the evening's serenity settle within, the quiet a natural partner to introspection and rest. The day's rich narratives echoed in the air, their resonance lingering in corners known and comforting. Inside, he found solace in routine, the nightly rituals offering a bridge back to the heart of his mission. As he prepared for rest, Jerome's mind continued to sift through the day's events each voice a strand in the intricate weave of transformation they pursued. The journal on his nightstand beckoned, its pages a tapestry waiting to absorb the essence of today's journey. Jerome settled into the task, his pen flowing with ease across the page, chronicling the lessons learned, the stories heard, and the resolve renewed. Change is a story unfolding, each voice a note, each step a rhythm that propels us toward justice. Together, through the chorus of voices, we inscribe the narrative of our world anew. Satisfied, he closed the journal, tucking its truths into the vault where memory and hope converged. It was a chronicle of progress, a record not just of what had been, but of what could yet be. With the night wrapping him in its quiet embrace, Jerome found himself drawn to the window, the city's twinkling lights a constellation of resilience and resolve, reimagined by today's trials and triumphs. As he stood there, a solitary figure in silhouette against the night, he reflected on the strength drawn from each shared story, each ally met along the way. It was this interconnected web of purpose that allowed the dream of equity and justice to remain not merely an aspiration, but an impending reality. When he finally slipped into bed, it was with the knowledge of the path etched clearly before him, a journey illuminated by the unyielding glow of shared pursuit. Each day, one step closer to justice, sung through voices united. The silence of the night was a comforting whisper, promising renewal with the dawn. As Jerome surrendered to sleep, he did so, knowing that each morning brought them closer to the justice they fought for, a day at a time, a story at a time, until the dream under starlit night was a reality under the morning sun. The morning sun edged over the horizon, casting gentle ribbons of gold through the windows of Jerome's bedroom, nudging him awake with a comforting warmth. Outside, the city stirred, its sounds a familiar overture that signaled the promise of another day in a continuum of change and endeavor. Jerome rose with a sense of renewal, his mind refreshed by the restorative embrace of sleep. Today, the relentless call of justice required not only his presence but his unwavering conviction and the clarity that came from reflection and resolve. He moved through his morning rituals with a quiet determination, each task a preparation for the day's unfolding narrative. Each moment carried with it the weight of unfinished work, a tapestry still being woven with threads of courage and action, bound by the shared commitment of all who joined in his mission. Today, decisions would be weighed, and truths affirmed. It was a day that promised the clearing of clouds and the unveiling of clearer skies beyond. As Jerome walked to the courthouse, the morning air was crisp, invigorating. The world around him bustled with life, each person a testament to the resilience and vitality that nestled within the heart of the city. He moved with purpose, each step measured against the scale of justice he sought to balance, a melody composed of countless stories, each adding their own notes to the symphony of change. When he arrived, he found Clara waiting near the courthouse entrance. Her demeanor was a reflection of Jerome's own, an embodiment of readiness tempered by reflection. Their shared mission lay under the surface of pleasantries, deeply underpinning every word spoken. "Good morning," she greeted, the warmth of her voice infusing the air with intent. "How are you feeling about today's proceedings?" "Optimistic," Jerome replied, the word a capsule of the hope and determination nurtured by days like today. Every step forward brings us closer to where we need to be. Entering the courtroom, Jerome felt the familiar hum of anticipation, a space filled with the energy of people poised to continue chipping away at the barriers built by time, tradition, and indifference. The room soon filled with individuals whose presence marked the gathering of a collective force, each participant adding to the weight of expectation and potential. The morning's proceedings unfurled with meticulous predictability, yet beneath the surface, a current of transformative power simmered, a readiness sparked by the stories poised to shape the future. Every word spoken, every truth illuminated, served not just as testimony but as bricks in the formidable bridge they were constructing toward a fairer world. Today's session culminated with a moment long in the Makinga judgment that sought to carve a path toward justice, aligning with the resounding chorus of voices demanding visibility and acknowledgement. Judge Peterson, ever judicious and deliberate, reflected the weight of this decision in his measured delivery, each phrase crafting a narrative toward resolution. His words were both a result and a call to action, weaving together the fabric of advocacy into palpable progress, a curtain of veil removed, a revelation fueled by collective courage. In light of compelling testimonies, Peterson declared, his voice echoing the courtroom's past and future ideals, justice demands acknowledgement and reform. Let today's decision stand as a testament to the power of truth and the enduring strength of collective advocacy. We stand on the precipice of change, beckoned by the voices who dare to dream. The impact was immediate, a ripple of relief and validation that coursed through the room. It was a recognition of struggles endured and victories earned, a promise that the arc was, indeed, bending toward justice. As the courtroom emptied, the steps outside became a stage for the gathering of allies celebrating the monumental moment. The energy was electric, a kindling of triumph and resolve that resonated deeply with each participant before cascading outward into the wider world. Amidst the throng, Jerome and Clara exchanged a look, the weight of their work underscored by the smiles and gratitude surrounding them. "We did it, Jerome," Clara said, her voice catching with a rare, precious blend of emotion. "This is what progress feels like." "We did it together," he replied, their shared victory amplifying the significance of individual effort. "And we'll continue, raising more voices, until justice is the expected norm, not the hard-fought exception." Jerome paused for a moment, reflecting on the magnitude of what they had achieved, the countless voices that had contributed to this staggering realization of potential. It was a lesson and a promise, woven together by the hands and dreams of many. The city stretched out before them, vibrant and dynamic, a living testament to the possibilities nurtured by hope and action. As Jerome looked out upon it, he knew that their journey was not solely about destination, but the moments along the way, the truths uncovered, the bonds forged, the changes commenced. The mission they embarked upon was as infinite as the horizon, their directive clear: continue building, continue dreaming, continue fighting, until every voice was not just heard, but part of the chorus that defined a just and equitable world. As Jerome stepped forward, preparing to rejoin the rhythm of the city, a gentle sense of fulfillment warmed him, a whisper of a future drawn closer by today's triumph, extending an invitation to every person willing to dream. The echoes of possibility continued to surround him, a gentle hymn in the air as the sun kissed his path home. Each step was accompanied by the understanding that justice realigned today affirms the hope for tomorrow, a hope perpetually ready to meet every dawn, ready to sculpt new realities from the clay of dreams. What do you think justice should sound like? If you've been inspired by this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more stories of resilience and triumph.